see what breakdown products of cell metabolism are in the spinal fluid of the children or the monkeys. This means that if this thing gets going on a wide scale in any community, they'll be doing spinal taps on children because blood taps aren't good enough. Go ahead.
I would like to know what is the benefits of Ritalin for hyperactive children. I'm a special education and I work with young children.
Well, Ritalin is speed. It's related to the amphetamines and then to cocaine. We don't know the long-term damaging effects. In toxic psychiatry, I point out that in psychiatry, we don't study beyond a few weeks because we don't want to know what we're doing. So somebody like me has to come along and sort of get things from this outside in different places. We have one study at least showing brain shrinkage from Ritalin long-term. Whether that will hold up, I don't know. Again, it's in the book. But we know Ritalin stunts growth. And what we like to say in psychiatry, you see, is, well, it slows down the growth of height and weight. Well, what the hell's happening to the whole child when you slow down height and weight? I mean, things we can't even begin to measure. I mean, it's bizarre the way we cavalierly do these things. I wouldn't give Ritalin to a dog, let alone to a kid. And, I mean, it's just not the thing to do to human beings. The answer is not to drug children. It's to transform their world for them as best we can, period.
Jean?
Excuse me. My question, Dr. Braden, is are you aware of any psychiatrist or psychological group that is working out a test for a violent response to culture and cultural difference? Carol Taylor is the author of the Little Black Book, and she has a racism quotient test. And are you aware of any group that is working on a test to, in general, test European Americans for a violent response to culture and cultural difference, particularly police, correction guards, those people that would have a gun?
Yeah. I mean, that's going to have to be funded by the black community. When we fund things in the white community, you know who we're studying for what. I mean, these things don't exist, as far as I know. It'd be interesting to try to find one.
Well, this lady has one.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. So anybody thinks I might be interested in any, mail it to me. I get half of my information from letters and envelopes.
And this is a letter by the American Psychological Association that objected to Dr. Goodwin being appointed and asked Dr. Phyllis Harrison Dawson asked everybody the right to oppose him. And when I did, Dr. Sullivan wrote me back and said that the subject was closed. And on the Health Brain Trust is meeting, I think, 2 weeks from Saturday in Washington, D.C., Stokes, and I think people want to attend that meeting and speak on this situation and get rid of Goodwin. I'll leave these papers.
Yeah, give me one. Give me some.
Thank you, Jean.
I got one question that must be asked. I'm not a professional, I'm not educated, I'm a black woman that's the mother of a child. This baby starts school next week. I want to know, what can I do to protect my child?
Well, first of all, that's a larger question than I should even be answering. That is a question that really, I think, should be answered with community organization. But let me just say that at the present time, I don't know of any wide-scale program to start giving kids Prozac or other serotonergic drugs. But there is a huge program to give children Ritalin. And when the end of the year comes and they haven't got enough kids in their project for ADD, attention deficit disorder, so they're afraid of not getting funded the next year, and they come tapping on your door and they say your daughter or your son isn't paying enough attention in school, you say, what's the matter with your educational system? Don't drug my kid.
We got to terminate here. Answer that question. There's one white man, and you ask him what can he do when we got a room full of black people, you know? It's not for him to do what he has done is bring us information. It's up for us to do what has to be done. We're talking about self-determination. That's all we want. All we want is information, documentation. If we don't move with it, as I said before, then we can forget it. We don't deserve to be on the planet. You got 300-400 black people in a room, and you're going to ask one white person, what can he do to stop it? We have to stop. That's the point of this particular meeting. That's what we're trying to say. He's done what we wanted him to do. We've got... Oh, hold on. Brother, right now, listen up, hold it a second, brother. Wait a minute, I can deal with this. I'll deal with this. Brother, now you gonna let one person, whether it's one, where you going, brother? Where you going? Get on back to your seat. You ain't got nothing to say, it's over. We got some other speakers. But listen, let me tell you something. Hey, yo, listen here. Let me tell you something. We're not gonna let one person disrupt this meeting. You're doing it. I'm telling you, you're doing it. We don't want to hear. Excuse me a second. Listen. We are trying to build some momentum here. We're not gonna let anybody disrupt what we're trying to do, because I said this is a very serious program and we got some serious work to do. What Dr. Bregan has done here has given us some information, and it's up to us to translate how we're gonna deal with it. It's not for him to tell us what to do, and he's not doing that. It's not for anybody in a time of emotionalism to come up there and then take, because they want to have their own star place in the sun. You know, if you want to do that, then get a hall, put some circulars out, put some money up, hold your own meeting, you know, and then let them people have all the time you want. What we're trying to do, we invited people here. Most people seem to agree that we want. We also said that we have a very important immediate problem we want to deal with, and that's the question of how the state has moved on the movement since the 21st of August, when we had the 21st anniversary of George Jackson's assassination and a program about political prisoners. And I point out before Daruba got here about the situation with Daruba and with Mumia Abu-Jamal. And at this particular time, we want to deal with it. Dr. Bregan will be here. Some will get a chance afterwards to talk to him, you know, to continue this discourse, but we want to do that, and we also want to have a cultural presentation that we think is in sync with what we're doing. And we know that we use culture as a weapon, because we understand, as Amilcar Cabral told us, before anything else, liberation is an act of culture. So at this particular time, I'd like to bring a brother who doesn't need much introduction, because since he's been released on March of 1990, he's been going around the country and around the world speaking on behalf of political prisoners, and now he is standing within days or months of becoming a political prisoner again. And that is something that the movement, you know, no matter what kind of difference we may have and what kind of experience we've had and even conflicts with one another, that is something that the movement is united to protect a brother or a sister against the state. The state is moving, it's up to the movement, unless you want to make the Village Voice headline be true, to say y'all are dead. Y'all don't look dead to us. Y'all have not acted dead, and we don't know if you're part of the movement, but we will find out, or one of the ways we're going to find out is how you respond to what we're trying to do tonight. At this particular time, will you please welcome Brother Daruba bin Wahad. So the business that they got there.
Testing. First of all, I want to thank Wbai and the Patrice Lumumba Coalition and the other organizations that have come together over the past several weeks to begin to address some very vital issues that affect us. But I want to say one thing, and just like Malcolm, I'm going to preface it with a statement. I didn't come here to tell you what you want to hear. I came here to tell you what I believe is true. I didn't come here to offend anyone, but if through telling the truth you are offended, then so be it. I want to say that black people in this country, and people of color in this country, but especially African people, have always had a fascination with the notion and the idea that there is some secret plot to annihilate us. So much so that we can fill an auditorium in order to receive information about this secret plot, but we cannot fill an auditorium in order to free those individuals who fought for our freedom and liberation. The reason why that is because the truth is that there's two types of knowledge. There's knowledge that is esoteric, and there's knowledge that will set you free. The enemy attempts to fill our heads with esoteric knowledge so that we will go on being esoteric, so that we will go on being the eternal victim and the eternal slave. Revolutionaries and progressive people attempt to fill their heads with knowledge that will liberate them. The gentleman that was here earlier brought you information. What you do with the information is totally up to you. Information is intelligence. They say that information is intelligence because the more you know, the more you are responsible for. And the problem with many black folks is they don't want to be responsible for too much. Having said that, I want to say if it took this long for us to realize that the people who have organized this society based on white-skinned male privilege are out to get us, then we got a serious problem. If it took this long for us to realize that they have engaged in every form of scientific, social, cultural, political, and economic chicanery to maintain us in a position of oppression, we are sorry people. So why is it that we cannot understand that the key to liberation is the building of a revolutionary movement? That the key to liberation is the building of a movement that empowers people. And that without the empowerment of people, there can be no change in society. I said it before and I will say it again. Every progressive change that has occurred in this nation has occurred as a consequence of our struggle for our humanity. Every movement that has evolved in the past 40 years has rode on the tail of the black liberation movement. They piggybacked on our shoulders. When we fought against the system of legal apartheid in this country in the 1950s, it not only empowered the black middle class, it also empowered people who were considered less than a citizen. It empowered Jews. It empowered white women. It empowered gay and lesbian people. It inspired them to struggle for their own humanity. So why is it that in this day and age, after 12 years of Bush and Reagan, as we suffer the greatest economic disaster in modern times since the Great Depression, how is it we don't have a movement? Ask yourself that. If Malcolm was alive, what would he be? Probably a political prisoner. And if we had a forum on political prisoners, very few of you would have been here to support Malcolm, you see. We wear him on our t-shirts, we wear him on our head, we wear him on our butts, we eat his name out of potato chip bags. But we do not understand that the key to what Malcolm was about was his capacity and ability to analyze a situation, develop a strategic vision around that analysis, and to move on the situation. To move on the situation. You and I have very little time. I didn't need a white professor or doctor to tell me that. Our youth have not only been marginalized, they will be exterminated if we do not start a movement in this country to radically alter the relationships of power in this society. Power is the name of the game. There are two types of power. There is the power to kill other people, and there is the power to kill yourself. We practice the second one, the latter type. We know just enough to help kill ourselves. Whereas the enemy understands how important it is to confuse and how important it is to misdirect the energies and the rage of people who are living on the borderline. Each one of us in this room is probably one paycheck away from being homeless. Black women in this room are one step away from being treated like the women in Puerto Rico who were involuntarily sterilized. Why? Because if we think that the anti-abortion movement is a movement concerned with life, look at Mumia Abu-Jamal. Look at this society that kills black children in the prime of their life, but want to demonstrate against the destruction of an embryo. Who say that the human right of a fetus is more important than the human rights of a fully developed human being. I'll say and say it again. The issue is not pro-abortion or anti-abortion. The issue is control of the womb. Control of the womb, because it's from the womb that the workers come. It's from the womb that the cannon fodder and the warriors come. It's from the womb that society develops its population. And if you could control the womb, you could control society. So, when black women demand the right to control their own bodies, they are demanding a fundamental and basic human right. We have to understand that our position of oppression is premised on our inability to destroy our enemy. It's premised on our inability to make their oppression of us profitable. You see, you cannot oppress a people if it's non-profitable. You see, it's profitable. It's profitable for Harlem to have indecent housing. It's profitable for there to be a 40% or more unemployment rate amongst black youth. It's profitable for these prisons to be stacked up with black flesh and stashed away in white rural areas where there's high unemployment. Just 2 days ago, George Bush authorized $8 billion to subsidize farmers and people who build fighter airplanes. But they can't find $1 billion to rehabilitate the South Bronx. Why? Because the devastation of the South Bronx is a consequence of our marginalization as a people. Marginalization means that when we were brought here as instruments of production, that's what we was. We were instruments of production. We were brought here because our backs were strong, because our arms were strong, because we could pick cotton and tobacco. We were brought here as tools of agricultural production. And when this society moved from an agricultural to an industrial level, they didn't need us on that level anymore. And now that they have become so sophisticated technologically, they don't need you now anymore. Don't be surprised. Don't be surprised when someone tells you that you will get only as much freedom as you are willing to fight for. Don't be surprised if someone tells you that if you do not organize, you will be as obsolete and as extinct as the dodo bird. We will be the dinosaurs of the 21st century. You know, somebody said that in a Woody Allen movie, you never see black people. And we discovered that Woody's a perv, a child molester. But he represents New York. Because you see, that's wistful thinking that you see in the Woody Allen movies. They would rather not have us here in New York. That's the ideal New York, absent us. You know, before they put that slick-haired Negro, what's his name, Billy D. Williams, in the Star Wars movies, you didn't see no black people in the 41st century either, did you? There was no black people on them Klingon ships in Star Wars. You was gone. You was a dinosaur. You were in the Museum of Natural History. If you go to the Museum of Indians, or you go to the museum and see extinct species, you can see little tourists coming through with their children, and the children asking very fundamental questions. Mommy, what's that? And their mother would say, well, that was an animal that lived in the latter part of the 18th century. It doesn't exist no more. So when they make wax images of us and put us in ghetto family settings and display it in the Museum of Natural History, and a little white baby comes through and say, Mommy, who are these people here? Oh, those were Negroes from the latter part of the 20th century. They're not with us anymore. They're all Paula Abdul. They look like Paula Abdul. You see? They think like Paula Abdul. I'm saying to you that the issue is very, very clear. We have to organize ourselves from block to block and street to street in every community in this country and demand political, economic, and social power. If we do not receive political and economic and social power as a consequence of our organization, then this society will come to a screeching halt. Like Malcolm said, there has to be freedom for everybody, or there will be freedom for nobody. That's just not a phrase or a slogan. It's a premise. You see, it's a proposition. In this day and age, right now, in 1992, the United States government is moving in a way to completely undermine our capacity and ability to exercise political power. They have confused us with the Colin Powells and the Clarence Thomases. They had black people coming out defending Clarence Thomas, saying he's a victim of a high-tech lynching. Why, this old shoe-polish lip Negro got all the power and influence he could for riding the jockstrap of people that hated black folks, that despised black people, that hated women, that hated minorities, that hated gay and lesbian people. He got into the position of influence and power precisely because he was as white as he could be. And you talking about somebody lynched that Negro, they should have cut his head off. And you should have helped him. We can't fake any more moves. We have black enemies of black people who will not only disrupt meetings, but take your life. We have Negroes in this audience right now wearing sound equipment to take it back to the mouths and say, you hear what they talking about, boss? The Negro that gave Malcolm mouth-to-mouth resuscitation was a black man. And he was a New York City Police Department undercover agent. Let's be clear. There are black enemies of black people. And in order to deal with these black enemies of black people, those of us who are progressive have to be very clear in what we stand for. We don't have to worry about these handkerchief heads. We just have to be clear about what we are about. Let them go back and report to the master and tell him, they organized the black political party, boss, what am I going to do? He's going to tell them, join it, and if you can, disrupt it. But if you are clear in your analysis, if you are clear in the fact that everything that you do is political, how you love, who you love, how we talk to each other is a political statement. It's not just about posturing, you see, like Ice-T. He makes an album called Cop Killer. Crackers boycott the album. The police, who don't even buy rap music, told Time Warner, if you don't take this off the market, we're going to make sure you don't make no money. And Ice-T couldn't resist. He couldn't resist the profits from his career. The same thing that Ice-T did is the same thing that all of these Negroes do when it comes down to our interests versus their pocketbook. It's a question of mind over matter. They don't mind and you don't matter. They understand what the real deal is. They'll take their money and they'll go out to Beverly Hills and they'll lay up and they'll make movies, and we're so desperate to see black people and so desperate to see our image on the silver screen that we bum rush the movies and make them richer. We don't boycott the movies. We don't boycott the movies based on a principle of integrity for our community. We flock to the movies and then say, well, how are you going to criticize that brother if you don't see the movie? I'll tell you how. All you have to do is see what he stands for. See what he reflects in his consciousness. If all he can support is Mother Hell and he can't support black political prisoners, then what does that tell you about his consciousness? He only supports what white folks say is safe. Let one of them Negroes that claim to be a rap artist stand up on these stages and do an international concert for black human rights in the United States and the freedom of black political prisoners, and see how quick their contracts dry up. See how quick they all of a sudden become controversial. The minute one black basketball player made a statement about racism in the NBA, they jumped all over him. The next day he was on TV apologizing, wasn't it? He said every time a black basketball player make a move, it's athletic ability. And when Larry Bird does it, look how well he thinks about this, how intelligent he plays. That's racist, this brother said. Boy, 48 hours passed by and that Negro was retracting every word he said. Why? Because he wasn't going to get them Nike contracts no more. He wasn't going to be on the Wheaties box no more. He wasn't going to be the grinning, skinning Magic Johnson no more. Understand what we're talking about here. These Negroes represent you internationally. We're the only people that got basketball stars, rap artists, musicians, singers, trumpet players representing us internationally. They go to France, they go to England, they go to Africa, and people ask them questions like, well, what do you think about Clinton? And what do you think about Bush? Do black people have political power? Is there human rights for black folks in the United States? They don't ask Larry Bird that about white folks. They don't say, Larry Bird, you know, are white people racist? They don't ask Larry Bird about those things they asked George Bush about. But they ask us about that. Why? Because they think that all we're good for is skinning, grinning, playing a basketball, playing music, or partying. I'm saying to you that there is no culture in this society that is dynamic, that has international appeal, that does not come from us. Half of the Germans, if they listen to German folk music, young Germans, you should see the expression on their face. They feel like they're being tortured. This is their music. This is their music. I'm not saying this to be funny. I want you to understand something. Understand something very, very important. That the most dynamic aspect of so-called American culture is what you brought to it. And if you can't understand and stand up for it, you are through. there is going to be no more you unless you understand what you are about. Those who let other people define them will also let other people control them. The power of definition is the first power that you must seize before we build a movement. We have to define who we are. We have to define what we are. And we have to define what we stand for. And that is the most important message that you can grasp tonight. Who are you? And what do you stand for? Because if you stand for nothing, you'll die for anything. If you will not stand for the integrity of the black community, then anything they do in the black community is a consequence of your failure to defend its integrity. The other day, I saw a cop snatch 2 young black men. And the cop proceeded to get off all of his frustration on these 2 black men for snatching a grapefruit, cuffing them upside the head, and everybody stood around and didn't say nothing. And the minute I yelled out, "Oh man, cut all that crap, you don't have to do all that," he looked around. He became conscious that people were watching him. You have to make these crackers understand that you are bearing witness to what's going on. You have to make them understand that they can't come in our community and do whatever they want without a political consequence. They murdered Eleanor Bumpers. The cracker that murdered them is walking around free right now. They snitched on Malcolm, put him in the grave. The people that killed him are walking around free right now. Traitors in our community are walking around free right now. People say, "Hey, oh, you didn't know him? Oh yeah, he was the one that did so and so. I thought you knew that." You see? We're all these warriors. We're all these people that talk all of that militant talk. I'll tell you where they're at. They're talking to themselves. They're talking in the dark. You are the light. You, all of you sitting here represent the basis for a new movement. And we have to build it from the ground up. We cannot wait for some messianic leader to come along and build it for us. We cannot wait for that prophet to come in the mothership and set us free. We cannot go to Harvard and learn how to liberate ourselves. We can't go to Princeton and learn how to liberate ourselves. We can go to Harvard and learn how to get skills to contribute to a movement that will liberate us. Because individually, we don't matter. Collectively, they can't disregard us. Individually, we could only go but so far. We could only go as far as the collective goes. So the message I want to bring to you tonight is that this man, Mumia Abu-Jamal, a man who has stood up for people when nobody else would stand up for them, a man who dedicated his life to your freedom, is sitting on death row facing the electric chair. And if you do not stop his execution, then you might as well go downtown and turn yourself in to the executioner now. He's not Jesus Christ. He's not perfect. He will not die for your sins. He will die for his own principles. You will die for your sins. And the greatest sin that a person that's oppressed in an oppressed society can commit is to contribute to their own oppression. The greatest sin that you or I could commit is to help our oppressor oppress us. There is no greater transgression when you are on the bottom. There is no greater transgression when you are oppressed. This is so important to understand that I cannot overemphasize it. We have to make ourselves into an irresistible force. First in this city. Let's take New York first. Let's not talk about Chicago. Let's not talk about LA. Let the brothers and sisters in LA deal with LA. Let's deal with New York. Let's deal with shoe polish lip Dinkins that you put in office, that you got elected the first black mayor in New York, and then he turns around and appoints almost 3/4 of his administration from the very forces that oppress you. When Edward Koch was the mayor of this city, he didn't care nothing about you. Half of the people that Dinkins appoints and has in positions of trust and power are the same people that Edward Koch appointed. And you sit up here and say, well, he's a black mayor, at least he's trying. I'm saying to you that the most dangerous form of oppression is oppression in blackface, because you can't define the enemy clearly. When the brothers in Attica demanded black correctional officers, when they demanded black people in the Department of Correction, the Department of Correction went into the black community and said, okay, if you got a misdemeanor, you can still work for us. Before then, you couldn't work in law enforcement with a misdemeanor conviction. They said if you got a felony and it's 5 years old, you could still get a shot. You couldn't work in corrections or law enforcement with a felony conviction. But they lowered the standards to get black people into an institution that is dedicated to your oppression. And once they got in there and they became the commissioners and the deputy commissioners, it became that much harder to say that this is a racist institution, because the first thing they say is the warden's black, the commissioner's black. And you say, well, that's a point. That's true. The same way they oppress women, the most effective means of oppressing women is with other women. It's to use other women that gain their power and identification from their connection to men who oppress women. You see, it's a very shrewd and very calculated strategy, this neo-colonialism, this neo-Negroism, this neo-blackness, this neo-cultural nationalism. And I say cultural nationalism because we think that if we wear dreads and kente cloth that we black. We think that if we wear all these fly kente cloth outfits and waxed African cloth prints, that we're showing how Afrocentric we are, how beautiful we are as an African people. And yeah, we're beautiful as an African people, and we look good and all of that stuff. But I tell you, kente cloth ain't never stopped one of these racist crackers from blowing your brains out. Kente cloth ain't never made a bullet bounce off it. Your dreadlocks ain't never stopped one of them billy clubs from splitting your brains, your head open and spilling your brains into the street. What does it take to stop a racist cop? I'll tell you what it takes. Fear in the heart of that cracker so that he knows what he's up against. That's what it takes. These people don't respect nothing that they don't fear, and they don't fear you because you are not organized. So coming to this forum tonight should open your eyes. The sister that asked the doctor a question, well, I want to know what should I do because my kids are going to school. She asked him that question. She didn't ask him that question because she meant harm. She didn't ask him that question even because she is not an intelligent woman. I'm quite sure she's a very intelligent sister. I'm quite sure she's struggling might and main to raise her children and help them survive in this racist society. But without a movement to inform her consciousness, her struggle will be individual, her struggle will be unsuccessful. How do we build this movement? On September 10th in this city, we are going to march on City Hall. Yes. On September 10th in this city, we are going to march from 100 Center Street, the seat of the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. You know, that man that indicts, that has the power to indict whomever he chooses. That old white-haired cracker called Morgenthau. You know how they tell you how patrician he is, how distinguished he is, how he's one of the most powerful district attorneys in the United States, because Manhattan happens to be the capital of capitalism. He indicts whomever. If he chooses not to indict whomever, they don't get indicted. And did you know that he is an elected official? Did you know that he is elected to the office that he holds by less than 200,000 votes? There's more than 200,000 people in Harlem. There's more than 200,000 people right here in Manhattan who are progressive and who stand for progress. But how is it that we have Morgenthau as the district attorney? Because we are not organized, because we don't realize our own self-interest in practical ways. We have to build a black political party in this city from the grassroots up and make Dinkins come and beg us for his support. And then after he gets down on his knees and begs and promises, then we'll hold up his track record and say, oh, sorry, homeboy. You can't handle it anymore. You had it and you blew it. We are going to march on City Hall and say, Dinkins, you can talk about human rights in Israel. You can talk about anti-Semitism and the right of the Israeli people to have territorial integrity. You can talk about Joe Dougherty, an Irish political prisoner. You can wear a button and march in the Irish Day Parade. You can talk about South Africa and stand on the podium with Nelson Mandela. But David, what about Mumia Abu-Jamal? David, what about Dhoruba bin Wahad? David, what about the Queens 2? David, what about the New York 3? David, what about black human rights in Harlem? He must be accountable to you, your interests. Is it in your interest not to have this Negro accountable to you? And he's sitting in City Hall. He comes on television yesterday saying, well, look, don't panic because the water's poison. And I want you to know we've taken every effort we can to make sure that this poison water doesn't kill nobody. And I want to present the Commissioner of Environmental Affairs, Scram Jones. And Scram Jones comes up and he says, we are taking every precaution that we can. We have a new drug. We have a new chemical that when we put it into the water system, it will seal the lead into the pipes and it won't come out, and therefore let your water run for 1 minute. Don't feed the baby boiled water. There was a white boy that said, you don't need to be a weatherman to know which way the wind blows. There was a white boy that said that the pump don't work because the vandals took the handle. There was a white boy that said that you have to know which way the wind is blowing. Is it blowing in your face, and does it stink? I mean, if we pass by that garbage dump they got on the west side, we know it stinks. You know, they will build toxic waste in our community and then tell us, well, everything is happening as a consequence. You know, these two-headed babies that you got, and these pregnancies that's not coming to term. Hey, it's just a coincidence. It's not a coincidence. The only coincidence is that you're too dumb to realize your own best interests and move on it. Let's organize in this city right now, starting today. Let's begin to organize. When Wbai gives a forum and come here for information, take the information down. Each one take it back to 3. When we tell you to come to September 10th, don't come by yourself. Bring 3. When we give you a leaflet, don't hold on to it. When you get into the motor vehicles, print it. Run it off on their mimeograph machine. Stick it in the mailbox of those brothers and sisters if you're working in the post office, you see. Put it in the junk mail. Mail it to each other. We are inside of the machinery. We can bring it to a screeching halt. We are inside this machinery in such a way that if they try to pry us or loose from the machinery won't work. They could patrol these streets day and night, but sooner or later, overtime's gonna catch up with them. This is why the United States Army is paring down its forces, because it can't afford to have a large force. This is why they have one plane that can do 50 different things, because they can't have 50 different planes. You see? And that one plane could be grounded because of some bubble gum behind the instrument panel. Bubble gum. $80 million plane, $80 million ride, man can't move because of bubble gum. I'm saying to you, don't think that this is unreal. Don't think that because you 10% of the population or 12% of the population or 15% of the population that you can't make a difference. If less than 40% of the population could control this city and control this country, if only 5% of this society could control the wealth and resources of it, I'm quite sure 15% of it could bring it to a screeching halt. Don't get hung up on Jesse's message of hope. Don't talk that hope crap around me. Talk about despair. Talk about people dying in the streets and begging in the streets. Talk about people who can't get a job and want to work. Talk about black children raising children. Talk about black kids killing black kids. Don't talk that hope crap around me. Talk about reality. Talk about the real deal. Jesse could stand up in front of the Democratic Committee and talk that hope crap if he want to. He could make jokes about people being in prison if he want to in order to bring a message to white people. But I'm telling you, if you don't get real about your despair will consume you. Don't be indifferent, get angry. Don't be blasé, be enraged. Become very emotional about what oppresses you. Take it personal. You know how them crackers tell you, ain't nothing personal. Sorry, but we had to lay you off. It ain't nothing personal. It ain't nothing personal. You can't get no more personal than that. You done cut off my whole livelihood. Take it personal. When you see a black man being dissed or a black woman being dissed by one of these fascist cops, take it personal. Get to screaming and hollering and agitating. And if you can't do that, if you can't scream and holler and agitate because you're afraid something might happen to you, then encourage somebody else to do it. And if you can't encourage somebody else to do it and scream, write a letter. If you can't write a letter, if you can't throw a brick, if you can't hate it, at least in your mind despise it. Don't be a chump. Don't let them do it in front of your face. Don't let them do to you what they have done to our ancestors and then call it a day. And they say, well, that's then, let bygones be bygones. We all Americans, we all here now, let's live together. I don't want to live with them. I don't want to live with people that pollute the earth. I don't want to live with people that disrespect other people's human rights because of the color of their skin or their gender. I don't want to live with them. Now, maybe you do. I don't. And I think that if I don't want to live with them, I should stand up for what I believe and relate to the people that I do want to live with. You know who I want to live with? I want to live with people who talk about the empowerment of oppressed people. I want to live with people who look at other oppressed people and see their humanity and not the content of their pocketbook. I want to live in a community that nurtures young people and tell them that they are the future that can take humanity to the highest level it's ever attained. I want to live in that type of society. You have a vision, make your vision their reality instead of their reality becoming your nightmare. Don't think that to be a visionary is to be a dreamer. Don't think that to be a visionary is to be a dreamer. Because I'm going to tell you something. They bottled Martin Luther King's dream. They packaged it. They made it into a slick item. And along with Coretta Scott King, they sold it to everybody. And every year when Martin's birthday come along or February come along, Black History Month, we told the dream is alive. We see panel discussions on the Donahue Show talking about the dream. Huh? Ain't nobody bum rush the Donahue Show and say, hey, look, we ain't about no dream. This is a nightmare, and this is what's coming on the television. We don't want to hear that. We don't get outside of the studio, and when the Negroes come out after pontificating on national television, we don't hit them upside the head with no rocks. We don't throw nothing at them. We don't bum rush them. Them brothers that's pumping all them weights and running around like they karate experts, don't jump out and kick them upside the head. They don't do nothing. How is it that we got Curtis Lewa running around the city organizing black and Puerto Rican youth, and we ain't got no black and Puerto Rican youth to defend the black community? How is that? Curtis Lewa. At least the mob had enough courage to try to knock him off. You ain't got enough courage to knock off the cracker that killed Eleanor Bumpers. You ain't got enough courage to build a movement to defend yourself. Defend yourself, black people, because if you don't, nobody will. On September 10th, we will march on Dinkins' office. That's the beginning. After September 10th, there's going to be a rally in this city dealing with the issue of a civilian complaint review board. The 10th is going to be at 9 o'clock at 100 Center Street. And we're going to march from there to City Hall. The more people we have, the more traffic we tie up. The more traffic we tie up, the more white folks going to be disturbed. The more white folks are going to be disturbed, the more they're going to pay attention to what you're talking about. Because you know how they was on the plantation? They used to look over at Catfish Row and say, what the niggas doing over there? Well, they stay over there singing and humming. Oh, everything all right. They look over there and they say, what's happening over there? It's quiet, boss. Ain't nobody said nothing. Nobody said nothing? Something wrong. You see? You remember what happened after L.A.? White folks was bailing out of New York. They was running out. I had people saying hello to me. Ain't never spoke to me in their life. And I'm quite sure every last one of you sat on the subway and white people start talking to you. For the first time they saw your ass. For the first time they thought this person might be disturbed. You see? That's because them brothers in the street and them sisters in the street, they wasn't just black people. They were Asian. They were Latinos. They were young white people. They were people who were the victims of police brutality every day of the week. Every day. And you should have seen the fear in the faces of the New York City Police Department. They was petro. They were so afraid that they lost all semblance of cohesion. All that training that they got, all that hut, 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 up the hill and down the hill, went out the window. They lost it. And we ain't even do nothing. All we did was look mean. We ain't do nothing. September 10th is important. And I'm going to share this with you before I leave. Today we found out that we got a new judge. The judge that we have has been on the bench approximately 6 months. He's young, he's weak, and he was handpicked by the judge that retired. He will have a hearing on September 17th. And he says he wants to get a handle on the case. His whole future rides on the case that he has now that involves my allegations of prosecutorial misconduct and political persecution. We don't stand much of a chance. But I'll tell you something. If you fill those streets, if you make your rage known, if you make it understood that you will not tolerate another iota of injustice in this city, that judge all of a sudden might get some backbone. He all of a sudden might start thinking twice about what he says or does. And I tell you, I wouldn't be standing on this podium today if you didn't come to court. I wouldn't be talking to you now if it wasn't for the fact that you filled the courtrooms every time I went to court. And you must understand that that made a difference. When you took off from work to come to court to see about me, it made a difference. And because you came and saw about me, I will not shut my mouth for 1 second in this city. I will tell the truth and continue to tell the truth. It's because of you. You. There is going to be a demonstration in Philadelphia in October. The date that we had talked about was the 21st, but we realized that Mumia Abu-Jamal, I went to see him yesterday. We drove to Pennsylvania and I saw him for several hours yesterday. And we talked to the people in Philadelphia, and we have a little time to organize more effectively for Philadelphia. And let me tell you what Philadelphia means. They got that old bell there they call the Liberty Bell. Every year they go look at it with a microscope and they dust it off and they keep it clean because it represents their independence. It represents their self-determination. It represents their struggle for human rights. You see, we are going to march to Philadelphia for Mumia Abu-Jamal. We're not going singing "We Shall Overcome." We are not going to the city of Philadelphia because we love the mayor there, the Negro. We are not going to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, because we are enchanted with the Liberty Bell. We are going to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania to save the life of Mumia Abu-Jamal. But more important, and Mumia will tell you it's more important, we are going to Philadelphia to represent what Mumia stood for. Because they could burn Mumia, but then they have to realize that they created 100,000 Mumias they're going to have to burn. So when we announce the date for Philadelphia, be there. September 10th, be there. September 17th, in this city, be there for the Civilian Complaint Review Board action and rally. When we have the police brutality hearings in this city, be there. Come with your sneakers and your boxing gloves on. Don't come to sing, come to swing. Don't come to bear witness to a cover-up. Come to demand the truth, and if they don't give up the truth, tear the microphones out the place. Tear the place up. Don't let this go down in this city anymore. And if the cop is out there right now that think they could murder another black youth in this city and we won't mobilize behind it, they're damn fools. And they could call the ambulance chasers with the slick hair if they want to, who sell empty threats out here all day long. They're going to arrest the Jew that ran over Cato. They ain't arrest nothing but their consciousness. They ain't arrest nothing but a people's movement. I don't see that man being arrested by a people's movement because we don't have a movement capable of arresting him. You are the movement. You arrest them. I'm saying to you that when leaders stand up in front of you and make all of these grandiose statements, hold them to it. Don't let them slip and slide out the way. Tell you ain't time. Have you marching from one white community that murdered us to the next one. Ain't no sense in marching to those communities no more. Let the sun set and let them find out what our rage is all about. Organize that rage. I'm going to tell you something that's very important, and that's it. I'm out of here. I'm Black History. What I want you to understand is when black people are attacked by a racist community in this city, we should retaliate against the community so that they will hold these other mad dogs in check. Don't think that we just should march on it. Those who call the march, support it. Go on out there. Those who can't stand to be marching through white folks' community while they wave watermelons at you, I can't handle that. I cannot handle that. But if you can handle it, handle it. But understand, like Malcolm said, they may have all the guns and tanks they want, but when the sun sets, it's even Steven. Power to the people.